Bill is now winding up his intensive training for the championships at Townsend Oval, frequently travelling from Tinambit for hourly sessions. At 38 years old, he's part of the growing ranks of cyclists returning to the sport to compete in veterans divisions.
Still very competitive. A lot of the fellas we're racing against are former Olympians and former state representatives, and it's nice to be able to compete against those fellas now that where I might have wasted my opportunities when I was a bit younger.
Bill is hoping to compete in as many events as possible at the championships, but will concentrate on the 3,000 metre individual pursuit, the 10 kilometre scratch race and the time trials. All events he recorded good placings in when he last competed in the Nationals in 1988. In training, Bill has covered the 10 kilometres in just 13 minutes and managed speeds in excess of 60 kilometres an hour in the sprints. Much of the high speed can be attributed to Bill's bike that weighs only 6 kilograms, fully rigged, and the reduction in the front wheel size giving slicker aerodynamics. The championships begin next Friday in Shepparton, and if Bill continues his present form over the three-day meet, he's sure to collect a host of medals.
The grounded trawler greeted local residents at first light this morning after a night of drama involving the rescue of 3 people by Newcastle Water Police, Stockton Surf Rescue and another fishing vessel. Police say the trawler, Peter's Pride, apparently developed steering problems at about 3 a.m. and struck a sandbank moments later. Dozens of trawlers operate along the bight during the prawn season, often working close to the surf line. It's understood Peter's Pride has run aground at least once before, and long-term residents say it's all part of the prawning season.
It happens periodically because they trawl in very close, and they only have to have a small failure, engine failure or net tangle around the props, and they foul up before they have any time to do anything. They're on the beach.
The crew quickly salvaged deck equipment, but late today attempts to drag the vessel out of the sand had proved unsuccessful.
Gary Calverla was travelling along Lake Road when the cabin began to fill with smoke. On investigating, he was stunned to find the engine engulfed in flames. Edging his mobile crane to the side of the road, Mr Calverla leapt from the cabin, fleeing from the choking smoke. Cardiff and Wallsend fire units were quickly on scene and stopped the flames from spreading to the lifting mechanism. It's expected the fire will not slow the company's huge workload from the December quake.
One school of thought is that the rapidly growing populations on the central and north coasts mean seats there would accommodate any increased quota. That leaves one of Swansea, Lake Macquarie, Charlestown, Wallsend, Waratah or Newcastle to be abolished. A similar thing happened here in 1970 under the Askin government when the seat of Hamilton was absorbed. Swansea Independent Ivan Welsh rejected the opposition leader's call for solidarity against Premier Greiner. Mr Welsh said Swansea would remain, and even if it didn't, he'd win another seat anyway. Mr Welsh speculated that Labor-held Port Stephens could be abolished and absorbed into Great Lakes, Newcastle and Waratah. But there are as many scenarios as there are people to be asked. Once legislation is passed, the final determination on new boundaries will be in the hands of the Electoral Commission. The Constitution requires that a referendum be held before the state's upper house is reduced and the maximum term for members there cut back from 12 to 8 years.
The Falcons have been desperate to help out the earthquake appeal and have organised a game with the crowd-pulling Sydney Kings. The charity game will be the first real competition games for both sides and the opportunity to correct any last-minute team faults. Today the Falcons got their last training session in and coach Ken Cole says the game is sure to be a physical encounter. because the Kings are still sore over their last defeat in Newcastle.
There's quite a good rivalry between the two teams, and they're a very physical group, so they tend to draw crowds everywhere they go because they create emotion. So it'll be a good test for our team tomorrow night.
The Falcons have also asked everyone coming along to the near sellout game to bring a tin of food.
Yeah, we're asking if they could, if possible, if they could bring along a can of food as a donation at the same time, because the Salvation Army stocks are very depleted, and once the initial earthquake disaster has gone, people tend to think that it's all over, and it's far from over.
It's the third time Umina has hosted the state championships, and according to organisers, the carnival is now one of the biggest sporting events for juniors in the country. Under-7s from as far south as Bega and as far north as Brunswick Head battled it out in the beach sprint, while the under-13 boys competing in the Ironman heats show the physique and ability that comes only from plenty of hours training. With grey clouds looming throughout the day and the occasional shower, the girls provided their own looks of thunder. However, the big interest of the day was the passing of a new revolutionary board design for junior divisions. Cracker Boards from Newcastle have developed a 4-fin board that was ridden by Swansea Belmont's Tim Forum today. Tim used the board in his 11 years Ironman race and picked up 5 places during the leg to eventually finish second outright. The finals for the 92 separate events will begin tomorrow from 8 o'clock. Meanwhile, in Newcastle, and swimmers were ordered from the water this morning due to a number of shark scares. The Westpac helicopter was called in to spot the sharks as they moved north from Merewether.
Information recorded at Newcastle University rated the quake between 2 and 3 on the Richter scale. It hit at 11:43 last night and lasted 4 seconds. Engineers have plotted the epicentre around Bullaroo and Swansea. No injuries or damage has been recorded. Compared to December's 5.5 quake, last night's rumble was relatively minor. The Richter measurement is a sliding scale, and experts today classified last night's quake as 30,000 times weaker. Despite this, the quake was still recorded as far away as Canberra. The National University pinpointed it at 12 k's below the surface in the same area as the December quake. And for a family at Cooranbong, it felt like 5.5 all over again.
Well, you could sort of hear it, even though it only lasted for a few seconds. You could hear it just sort of hit the front windows in the bedroom door and was gone. You know, it went that direction, and you sort of, even though the bed moved, you could sort of feel the house moving, sort of like a real quick little wave.
Mining engineers Dr. Conrad Muller and Gung Lee say these small aftershocks are a perfectly normal and healthy sign.
The stored energy has to be released, and if it is released in small pulses, relatively small pulses like this, then good.
Terry Jones farms oysters in the tidal waters of the Hunter River at Stockton, but after his second crop failure in a row costing around $140,000, he says he's now looking for some answers. Terry, what's killed these oysters?
I feel it's some pollution that's been released during the last fresh we had, and when the salt water came back and the oysters started to feed again, they've taken in the pollution and it's killed them.
Each crop loss came after floodwaters from the Hunter flushed the oyster racks, and while it's accepted fresh water can kill oysters, Terry Jones says other farmers aren't suffering similar losses.
Well, you don't think the fresh water's killed them? No, otherwise it would have killed oysters in all the other rivers, as well as the Karura and all the other places that had freshes the same time as we did.
There's got to be chemicals released, I'd say, when floodwaters are on, and they think we'll release the chemicals so it'll go to sea, but unfortunately it doesn't go to sea. It comes back in the river and it kills not only oysters, it kills fish. crabs, you name it.
Samples of the contaminated oysters have been sent to Lismore for laboratory tests. Peter Ryan, NBN News. Show today with thousands turning up for the traditional last day rush. While Sideshow Alley and Main Ring events are always popular, this year the show committee launched a new series of live acts to try and revitalise gate takings. $500,000 was spent setting up the show, money which organisers admit involved a calculated risk. Tonight at the show, wood chopping displays, trick riding events, the marching koalas and one final explosion of fireworks.
The track is located at the end of Mary Street, Argenton, and has been partially funded by the Lake Macquarie Council through the donation of land and earth materials. Mayor Ivan Welsh today declared the track officially open, but it was the riders who stole the show.
I officially open the track, and I hope everybody that comes here enjoys themselves as much as I can see the young people are obviously going to enjoy themselves today. Thank you.
A faulty gate mechanism caused the spill, but a few minor adjustments and the all clear was given for nearly 100 riders to pour over the course for the first officially sanctioned lap. Cardiff BMX Club President Terry Mitchell says more than 18 months' worth of hard work has gone into the actual construction of the track.
When we first started here, this was just a flat block of ground with a very bad clay base, so we've had to rip a lot of clay out and sort of put thousands of metres of chitter in to sort of get some drainage of some description here. So.
BMX riding has become a complete family sport, with fathers and sons working on their bikes together and competing side by side. And today nearly 300 riders from across the state turned out to christen the clay and open the BMX competitive season. The Bears growled early, claiming a try after a kick forward from Adrian Toole that was dived on by Tony Ray. The conversion gave Norths a 6-0 lead. Jeff Doyle and Ashley Gordon seem to be forming a great combination early in the season, with Doyle sending Gordon in for yet another runaway try. Tony Kemp then got in on the act and showed some neat steps to land himself a 4-pointer under the posts. But then a blow for the Knights when Steve Fulmer was carried from the field after collecting a knee. A second stroke of bad luck when the Knights' other halfback, Steve Walters, was sent from the field. North, seizing the opportunity, scored through the talents of Greg Florimo and John MacArthur.
Peter Sterling called it that Florimo's got it.
This house on the corner of Rowe and Bray Streets at Mayfield, unlike many in that area, escaped serious damage in the earthquake. But shortly after 8 o'clock this morning, it was shaken as a Ford Laser was flattened against a veranda wall. Although trapped for a short time, the elderly woman driving the car escaped with minor injuries. Her car had careened into the front yard of the house after colliding with a Holden Torana. The driver of that car also escaped serious injury. The intersection has been the scene of numerous accidents and is controlled by a stop sign.
Mr Morne announced his candidacy this morning at a special function at Queen's Wharf. On hand to lend support, one of the country's best-known independent politicians, State Member for Balmain, Dawn Fraser. Mr Morne needs a 14% swing against incumbent Labor member Alan Morris to take the seat, but says he is confident of a win.
Because of their faithfulness to
This room seats around 90 students and last year quite easily accommodated the university's Bachelor of Communications course. But this year, 50 extra students have been allowed to enrol in the course by mistake, and there's not the facilities to teach them.
We do not have enough staff at the moment to provide all of the classes that are needed for all of you, and we don't have spaces that are big enough.
It appears more HSC leavers are choosing to further their education, and the Universities and Colleges Administration Centre was unprepared for the upsurge. As well as communications, economics, architecture, commerce and computing sciences are also overcrowded. To overcome the problem in the Visual and Performing Arts Department, the university has allocated an extra $120,000 to employ more staff and extend facilities. But that will take time, and until then, the 135 communication students have been told the quality of their course is at risk.
Oh, it's no use hiding anything. I think you're silly if you do that, because that comes back at you at the long run. So you may as well tell the students what the situation is. I think they took it in good faith. They realise what has happened, and I think by the looks of things today, they're prepared to work through the situation.
Lee Morn is a name and a voice most associate with the Newcastle Knights. In the past weeks, he's also been the man widely tipped as an independent challenger for the federal seat of Newcastle. Despite constant denials that he was in the running, Mr Morn today formally took up the political football. Until now, he says he was undecided. Mr Morn has taken a month's leave from the Knights, but says he won't be back.
In one way and another, I'll never quit the Knights, but I probably won't be back full-time. I'm going to Canberra to do something bigger and better for the city.
Mr Morn will need all of his confidence. Novocastrians have voted Labor in federal elections since Federation, and it will take a swing of at least 6%, depending on preferences, to unseat Alan Morris. According to Mr Morn, however, Newcastle has been ignored under Labor.
Look at the empty shell over here. It's a monument to Newcastle's failure to attract the interest of major parties in Australia. I mean, we could have had the frigates being built there.
If he does win, Mr Morn will become one of just a handful of independents ever elected to the House of Representatives. Although it's a long way from calling passes to calling policies, Mr Morn says he can do the job.
As everyone's well aware, I've always rated well in my sporting coverages and my endeavours in that area. But that's the Lee Morn, the entertainer. There is a serious side to the character as well.
The Electoral Commission says more voters than ever will be deciding the next member for Newcastle after an expensive campaign encouraging people to enrol.
Sure, you can have your say. Update your enrolment today.
The Newcastle Electoral Office, now in the GIO building in Hunter Street, reported a rush of potential voters in the last week.
We have been inundated today with people coming to the counter to change their address on the electoral roll.
Now, however, the period of grace has ended. Eligible voters not on the roll face a fine of $50. Rosshampton, NBN News.
Knights officials spent most of yesterday preparing video evidence to show the judiciary that Walters did not maliciously attack the head of Jason Martin. However, Judiciary Chairman Vince Bruce handed down a guilty verdict and commented that this was the sort of tackle we do not want to see. Knights Chief Executive Brian Judd says the 2-game suspension, although damaging to the club now, will not have a lasting effect on the team or Steve.
Well, he's naturally disappointed. He was looking forward to having a very good season, and the coaches were confident that he was going to have a good season. It'll be a slight setback for him, but he's such a very good competitor that I'm sure come the end of the season it'll be a memory.
Although suspended for 2 Winfield Cup games, the ruling will not prevent Walters from participating in trial games. Now eliminated from the Challenge Cup, the Knights are desperate for more pre-season competition and will travel to the Central Coast this weekend.
With the Knockout Cup played under the format that it is, it's very difficult to arrange trials well in advance, and we have rushed around the last day or so and arranged a trial with St George at Wyong.
The game will be played at Morriebreen Oval on Saturday night, while the lower grades will continue their preparations with trials against South Newcastle at Dudley. This year's pre-season cup has also forced the cancellation of the annual Newcastle Challenge Cup against last year's premiers. Conflicting dates and the chance to rest the ISC ground before the competition proper gave the Knights no option but to can the game.
The group was registered only last week, yet already has around 200 members from 54 caravan parks. Feelings run so strong that with only an hour's notice, this meeting gathered. Their greatest fear is eviction for no reason, under this clause of the Tenancy Act. Yet all these people have a minimum equity of $50,000 in their homes.
It is because of this fear that the people that I phoned up this morning, at least 90% of them were afraid to come because they were afraid of having their photograph or be seen on television.
They are already a vulnerable section of the community. Most are elderly, invalid pensioners or single-parent low-income families.
As far as I'm concerned, you go into a park and unfortunately you use your rights as a citizen. And to me, you're losing all rights as in your dignity as a human being.
Many have already experienced the humiliation and high cost of eviction. Others wish to move but find once in a park it's not so easy.
The owners of the park won't allow me to place a for sale sign on my home at all, and they won't allow me to go to an estate agent at all. They want me to go entirely through them. In other words, they want me to allow them to sell it, which I did agree to let them sell it. And they want 3% commission, which would be approximately $2,500.
But since her home went up for sale before Christmas, she says she's seen no potential buyers. But not all parks should be tarred by the same brush. One Central Coast proprietor has been campaigning with the group to see loopholes amended.
Generally the worst one I think would be Clause 99 of Ordinance 71, which doesn't require proprietors to tell people inquiring of park managers the rules and conditions and fees that apply. He's not compelled to tell them these things until 24 hours after they come into the park, which is a bit late then because they spend a lot of money setting up their homes, probably in the order of $4,000 or $5,000.
These rules can include an increase in rent for each child in the home, a fee for visitors who come for dinner, around $6 after 5 p.m. in some parks. A submission from the Mobile Home and Park Residents Association and Mr Daly to David Hay, Minister for Local Government, last November, has now been passed on to Housing Minister Joe Shipp. And Lake Macquarie Mayor Ivan Welsh promised residents the matter would be discussed in Parliament today. Rebecca Skinner for NBN News.